In this video, I'm going to go over monopolies. Of the four market structures that we're going to study, monopolies are on the opposite end of the spectrum from perfect competition. Monopoly characteristics include one large firm, their product is unique, there are high barriers to entry, so monopolies are price makers instead of price takers, and there is some advertising. Based on our characteristics of monopolies, the answer to this question is C. A monopoly might actually have competitors, but it all comes down to the market share that they hold. So here are some percentages for various companies. No surprise probably to you that Nike holds 90% of total market share for basketball shoes. Can a monopoly be good for the economy? Utilities are a good example of this. Economies of scale make it impractical to have several small utility firms. So it's natural for one utility to produce because they can actually provide the service at the lowest cost. Drawing monopoly graphs is going to look different than for perfect competition. The good news is that there's only one graph because the firm is the industry. The cost curves are the same. We're going to use the same profit maximizing rule where MR equals MC. The shutdown rule still applies as well. So maximizing profit for a monopoly. What looks different here is the marginal revenue curve is no longer the same as the demand curve. It lies below the demand curve. So the profit maximizing quantity is still where MR equals MC. This monopoly is going to produce an output of 6. Their total revenue is going to be the profit maximizing output of 6 times 7 is 42. Their total costs are going to be 36, and their profit is going to be $6. So monopolists produce the profit maximizing quantity where MR equals MC, but the price they're going to charge is higher. So to find the price, you find where MR equals MC, then you go up to the demand curve and over, and that's the price that a monopoly will charge. What if your costs are higher for the monopoly than the price that you're charging? Then the monopoly can operate it at a loss, like in this graph. There's a loss of $10. Take a look at this graph and calculate each of the following. And there are the answers. And take a look at this graph and calculate total revenue, total cost, the profit or loss, and the profit or loss per unit. Notice that in this graph, the marginal cost, the average total cost curve is horizontal. Here's a practice question, and the answer is A. Another one, and the answer is B. And for this one, the answer is C. The answer is C for 54 and C for 55. These questions compare monopoly to perfect competition. So in a perfectly competitive firm, question 23, the firm cannot affect the market price. They're market takers. If a perfectly competitive firm were monopolized, the answer to this question would be B, the price would increase and the quantity would decrease. Are monopolies efficient? In perfectly competitive markets, they're both allocatively and productively efficient. In contrast, monopolies are inefficient. They charge a higher price and they don't produce enough. So they're not allocatively efficient. They're producing at higher costs, so they're not productively efficient either. In perfect competition, both consumer and producer surplus are maximized. For a monopoly, they're going to end up producing less and charging a higher price. Think about where consumer and producer surplus would be for a monopoly on this graph. So you find where MR equals MC and go up to the demand curve, and this is the price. From the price up to the demand curve is our consumer surplus. Producer surplus is from the price down to the supply curve, and the area to the right of the profit maximizing quantity is our deadweight loss. So monopolies underproduce and overcharge, decreasing consumer surplus and increasing producer surplus. Are monopolies productively efficient? Does the price equal the minimum point on the ATC curve? No, monopolies are not producing at the lowest cost on the ATC curve. Are monopolies allocatively efficient? Does the price equal the marginal cost curve? No, the price is greater. The monopoly is underproducing. Monopolies are not efficient. Again, an example of a natural monopoly would be a utility. You have one firm that can produce the socially optimal quantity at the lowest cost due to economies of scale. So it's better to have only one firm because the average total cost is falling at the socially optimal quantity. And the answer to this question is B. And another one, the answer is A. The answer is B. The answer is C. The answer is E and D.